This video is about the boosted jump button in Rocket League Sideswipe. We'll talk about 3 things related to this button, starting with instructions on how to enable it, then what situations it's most useful in and exactly how to use it. And then lastly, we'll talk about why I kind of hate it. Okay, so just quickly, before we get into how to enable it, I should say that this boosted jump button is only for players who play the game using the touchscreen on their phones. It cannot be used by players using a controller. And with that out of the way, if you are a touchscreen player, how do you enable the boosted jump button? First, tap Settings in the top right corner. Then Game Settings if you're in the main menu, or Show Options if you're in a match. Then Configure. And then press on this red button here. That's your boosted jump button. Now just press Enabled, and you can resize it with the scale slider and change the transparency with the opacity slider. Then just press the back button to save it. So now that you've enabled the boosted jump button, what do you even use it for? What kind of situations is it most useful in? As I mentioned in my video about beginner mechanics in Sideswipe, the first situation I think this button is most useful in is ground to air dribbles. Most players when starting out in the game just use the separate boost and jump buttons. So to start a ground to air dribble, they first have to get the ball on their roof, then jump and tilt their car back, and then start boosting up to the ball. However, this method is really slow and just not ideal. Instead, if you use the boosted jump button, it's one really fluid movement from the ground to the air dribble. And once you're in the air, you can switch to the regular boost button to carry the ball hopefully into your opponent's net. In addition to being useful for ground to air dribbles, it's also just generally useful to increase your aerial speed. As you can see, the boosted jump button aerial is much faster than the other one. And then, as an added benefit, if you do start your aerial and then decide to pull out, you can super quickly just aim down to the ground and tap the button again to ground yourself as quickly as possible. And the last situation I think boosted jump is most useful in is kickoffs in hoops. In fact, I'd say it's not only useful, some would argue it's pretty much essential. The most common fast kickoff in hoops is to basically double tap and hold the boosted jump button to aerial up to the ball as fast as possible. So often in hoops I see my teammates jumping and boosting separately and getting absolutely destroyed on every kickoff. Which is great for the opponents, but not so great for poor old Mogz sitting under the net. Okay, so if the boosted jump button is so useful, why do I hate it? So don't get me wrong, at first I really loved this button. It helped me win so many hoops kickoffs, allowed me to fast aerial and do super quick air dribbles. However, after a while, I really started to dislike it. One thing I noticed is that my right thumb became so much busier after I started using this button. The poor little guy was responsible for 3 different buttons, and he had to remember the location and size of each of them. And so often he would get confused. He'd press the wrong thing. Like instead of boosting, he'd press boosted jump and fly off to the side. Or instead of boosted jumping, he'd press some empty space on my screen and nothing would happen. And then I'd just start button mashing to find the right button. I really didn't like it. I wanted my control to be precise, not just mashing my screen. Therefore, I decided to switch back to just using the separate boost and jump buttons. And honestly, I've been absolutely loving it. However, to make this work, I also made one other incredibly important change that completely transformed the game for me. It's something that like 80% of you guys do. I stopped holding my phone like this. I switched to a completely different method that at first felt really uncomfortable, but after a while felt so much better and made me such a better player. So now I hold my phone like